So it says to recall what is the equation of a linear parent function. So remember, the parent function is the equation with little to no change at all. It's the most basic it can get, right? And linear equations are the ones that we've been talking about, getting them in order so that we can graph them. And those are in y equals mx plus b. All right? Plus b is what tells us where it starts on the y-axis, right? So if that was plus 4, I would know on my graph I'm going to go to 4, and that's where I'm going to start, right? So if I want the most basic one that hasn't been shifted up or down, my b has to be what number? 0, right? Okay, and then my m is my slope, how much up and over I go for every single point, right? So if I want to go up and over the most basic amount, how much up and over am I going to go for each point? 1 over 1, right? So the equation for the parent function is just y equals x, because our m is 1, so we don't have to write it, and our b is 0, so we don't have to write plus b. So if my m is 1 and my b is 0, where does this picture touch the x-axis at? 0. And where does it touch the y-axis at? Also 0. So the x-intercept and the y-intercept are both going to be at 0, 0 for your parent function. So today what we're going to be talking about is what happens. What does it do to your graph when you change these two numbers? So if you make it bigger than 1, what happens? Or if you make it smaller than 1, what happens? If you make this some number besides 0, how does that affect what our graph looks like comparing it to this parent function? Okay? So here they say, what would happen to the graph if we make the slope larger? So they already graphed y equals x for us, right? That's the parent function over there. Okay, then they want us to graph y equals 2x. Well, if my slope is 2, how much up and over am I going each time? Up 2 over 1. And we're still at 0, 0, right? So I just start at 0, 0, but just go up 2 and over 1. Okay, so there's a sketch of what y2 would look like. All right, the next one is y3. It tells us we have a slope of 3. That tells us we're going to go up and over how much for those points? Right. There's our y3. And then the last one is 6x. So still starting at 0, 0, but how much up and over will we go for each point there? Up 6 over 1. Very good. So we're not going to be able to fit but 1 point each direction on that one. Okay, so y1 was the one that was already drawn for us. This one was y2, this one was y3, this one was y4. So what happened to our graph as the slope got bigger on each one? What happened to the line? Probably got steeper, right? Started to decline a lot faster than the one before it. So the conclusion that we can draw is as the slope increases, our line gets steeper. Okay. Next section says what's going to happen to our graph if we keep making the slope smaller. So again, they already graphed the parent function for us where our slope is 1. On this next one, it says our slope is 1/2. So that means we're going to go up and over how much? Right. So there's our y2 with a slope of 1/2. All right, next one says the slope is 1/3. That one means to go up how much? Right. There's our y3, and then lastly, this one says we have a slope of 1/6, so that means when we plot the points, we're going up and over how much? 1/6, good. Okay, so this was the first one that they graphed for us that had a slope of 1. Y2 had a slope of 1/2, Y3 had a slope of 1/3, and Y4 had a slope of 1/6. So what happened to our graph this time? Less steep or flatter, right? Yeah, every time we made the slope smaller, our graph got a little bit flatter, closer to the x-axis, right? So as the slope decreases, the line becomes less steep or flatter, whichever way you want to word that. Okay? All right, last one where we're having to graph. They already have parent function graph for us. Now I want us to graph y2, whose slope is negative. So what does that mean? What's that going to change? Right, flip it the other way, right? So instead of going up 1/1, I'm going down. Correct. Okay, so there's our y2. Did the line get any steeper or less steep? No. No, right? Right, it just flipped the direction, right? Everything stayed the same, it just changed the direction. So the line changes direction. But the steepness stays the same. Okay, so now we know what's going to happen when our slope gets bigger. We know what's going to happen when our slope gets smaller. And we know what's going to happen when our slope has a negative in front. So they want us to kind of summarize all the things that we just learned. So it says the steepness of the line is affected by What? What changed the steepness of our line? Huh? Right. If the number was bigger than 1 or smaller than 1, right? That's what made it change steepness. So our slope is the number that's going to determine that, right? When the slope was bigger or larger, did our line become steeper or less steep? Steeper. Right? So when the slope got larger, that's what happened on this one, right? And every time we drew it, it got steeper and steeper and steeper. Okay? But when our slope got smaller, like 1/2, 1/3, 1/6, we said what happened? Very good. Okay. And then lastly, remember we had a negative slope. Did the steepness change at all? No. So slopes do not change the steepness. All that happens is it changes direction, right? Okay. So if you flip it over onto the back, they have this chart all filled in with all of these different equations. Okay? So we are just going to determine which one of those lines on each row should be steeper. Okay? So remember, our slope is what determines the steepness, not the y-intercept, right? So on this equation, which number in there is the slope? The 4 and the 6. Very good. Okay. So we know that steepness is determined by how much bigger or smaller one is, right? The bigger the number, the steeper it is. So out of those two, which one should be steeper? The 6. Good. So the line in the y2 column will be steeper. Okay? Okay. In that second row, which part determines the slope? The -2, right? But does the negative affect the steepness? No, so we're just looking at the actual number itself, right? Okay, so this one's slope is 2. What's the slope on this other one? 1. So which one's going to be steeper? Y1. Good. All right, what's my slope on this one? 2. What's my slope on this one? 2. So is one of those steeper than the other? No, they should be just the same, right? All right, last row. Yeah.
Why is the second one 2?
Just the same reason this one we said is just to remember the negative we wrote down on the front doesn't affect the steepness, right? The negative just flips the direction. So we don't want to get confused thinking, oh, -2 is smaller than 2, because the negative doesn't affect that. Yeah. So we got a slope of what on this equation? 1/2. And a slope of what on this one? 4/3. So out of those two, which one's bigger? Y2, the 4/3, right? So Y2 is going to be steeper than Y1. All right. Okay, then we've got this multiple choice question here. It says that the original function, y = 3/4 x minus 5, is graphed on the same grid as 4/3 x minus 5. Okay? They want us to determine which one of the statements would be true. So let's go ahead and graph both of these so we can see where they would be. So on this first equation, where are we going to start our line at? -5. Okay, and our slope is 3/4, so that means we're going to go up and over how much? Very good. Okay, so there's the first one, or Y1, we'll call it. All right. Or you can call it the old one. I think that's what they called it, the old or the original. Okay, this second one, where did it start at? Also at -5, but this one slope says we're going to go up and over how much? Right. ones are y2 or the new function is what they call them. Okay, so now let's read the answer choices and see which one of these statements is true. So A says that the graph of the original or the old is steeper than the second one. So is the first one we graph steeper than the second? No, so it can't be that one. That one's not true. Okay. Next one says that the graph of the original function is parallel to the other graph. No, right? Parallel means never touch, so it can't be that. Okay, the next one says that these graphs intersect at -5, 0. No, because that would be over here, right? Okay, last one says they intersect at 0, -5. Yes, that would be right there. Remember when we plot a coordinate point, it's always x, then y, right? Okay. All right, next one. Kind of the same idea here. It says if the slope of the function -4.5x is changed to 1.5, which of the following describes the graph of the new function? So you could go ahead and draw them both over here, or you could plot them both in your calculator. But the big difference is these two numbers, right? Okay, so which one of them has a larger slope? Is 4.5 or 1.5 larger? The 4.5. So that means this one should end up being steeper, right? But this one's negative, that one's positive, so they also are going to flip. Okay, so that's what we need to keep in mind when reading these answer choices. Okay? It says that the new function intercepts the x-axis at the same point as the original function. Okay, so can we see that from what we have right now? So it intercepts the y-axis. Which one's our y-axis? Which is on this line, right? So do they both start at 3.2? So that sounds pretty good, right? So it could be this one. The next one says that they cross the x-axis at the same point. Can we tell that from what we have? No. The graph of the new function, this one, is negative. Nope. The graph of the new function has a positive x-intercept. Can we tell that? So it's got to be our A. All right. Last one says which best describes the effect on the graph f of x is equal to -3x plus 7 if the y-intercept is changed to -5. So the new equation is this, right? Okay, so if both of them have a slope of -3, is one of them going to be steeper than the other? No. So it says on this first one, the slope decreases. Well, does the slope change? No. The new line passes through the origin. Does it start at 0, 0? Can't be that. The x-intercept increases, or the y-intercept decreases. So this was the y-intercept, now it's this number. Did it increase or decrease? Decrease. There we go.